stories about, Ellen, about the, my grandmother used to teach health there at, the school.
Hutloff?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my grandmother, so this is like the 40s. And one of her, couple of boys, I guess they were kind of in and out of school during the day. You could go out.
Yeah, it wasn't quite the same as it is now.
So they went down in the creek and they came back with a skull. They found a skull in Chambers Creek down there, and it was a flathead Indian skull, and this part of it was stone, had been
Really?
petrified. And she had it in my closet growing up.
Oh, that must have been
There, I had to
scary.
take
Startling.
inadvertent
And she was a
discovery
health teacher.
training.
Yeah.
I don't know
For
whatever
anything we
happened to
find
it,
like that,
because
yeah.
When she passed away, she had other health related things.
Yeah.
When I grew up.
Relics, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know whatever happened to
We
that.
found all kinds of stuff, but it's all animals, coyotes, raccoons,
shoot.
skulls, cats,
Yeah,
deer.
I wish I would have, know now what I.
Yeah.
All right, 5:31, we'll call this meeting to order. We're live. We have a quorum. Kate and Anesta are excused. And with that, I'd entertain a motion for the minute.
Move, we approve the minutes.
With the first,
Second.
Vito second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, unanimous approval. We don't have anyone for public comment. And so we roll on to new business and a climate change initiative and urban forestry program update.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to do this remotely. This is just much helpful. Appreciate it. So my name is Tiffany Spear. I am in the Planning and Public Works Department, and I'm the Planning Division Manager at the City of Lakewood. One of the things that is in my current portfolio is coordinating a multi-departmental project to launch an urban forestry program, which we've started, but it's not gelled yet into an actual program. But we're gathering a lot of foundational data that we're going to be sharing with you, some of which we have now, but as other final versions of things come in, we'll be providing you updated information. But eventually this information we're gathering will become the foundation for an actual 5-year plus urban forestry implementation plan. And it will be defined as we go. It's pretty open right now as to what exactly that means. Urban forestry programs can cover a lot of different things. And they are also quite often tied to concerns or preparation for climate change. So we're going to be kind of talking about both of those tonight and figuring out how to best braid those two issues together as time goes by. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Assuming I can find the right one to share. There we go. All right, so everyone can see that all right, yes?
Yep.
Okay. So I'll start at the top of our planning mountain, if you will. We have a comprehensive plan, which was just updated through a 10-year review cycle process this year. And so we now have what is called a natural environment element within our comprehensive plan. This is separate from the park's legacy plan, but it's complementary to it. And then we also have an energy and climate change element, which also has information and policy language related to what we're talking about tonight. So within the natural environment element, there are a number of policies related to creating an urban forestry program, some of which you see here. And the idea behind it is to preserve significant trees, promote public health or tree health, excuse me, as well as public health, and then increase tree coverage citywide. And part of that is specifically maintaining a comprehensive urban forestry program, making sure that street trees are not only planted but maintained, retaining significant trees and tree stands, maintain a tree fund, and then working toward what's been established by our city council as a citywide goal of a 40% tree canopy cover by the year 2050. And then also making sure that as all of this is done, all of this work is done, environmental equity is taken into account, meaning where are those parts of the city that in the past have not had the same advantages for quality of life that include, in many cases, tree canopy cover or vegetation at all, and trying to make sure that as planning goes forward for expanding the tree canopy to reach the goal citywide, those areas are given special attention. The other part I mentioned in our comprehensive plan that now relates to tree canopy is in our energy and climate change element, and we now have one that talks about improving the tree canopy. Looking at, though, the quality and the sustainability of the urban forest and tree canopy to mitigate urban heat island effects, address stormwater drainage concerns, and meet environmental quality goals. So it's looking at not just having a tree canopy period, but there's specific conditions that are being placed on it by this policy that our council adopted this year. So what have we done in 2024, and actually a little bit earlier as well, to start to work our way toward actually launching a, quote, urban forestry program? A couple of years ago, some of you may have been involved, there was an update to the city's tree preservation regulations and ordinances. And then the year following, we actually worked with University of Washington's Evans School to create, with their help, an implementation guide for the city, which kind of gives a step-by-step how to launch this program with a 5-year time frame in mind. And then this year, there have been 2 things done. The major piece is a tree inventory was conducted, and we also have done, in partnership with the Department of Health, the urban heat island mapping that occurred in August, which was calculated to be one of the hottest weekends of the year. So once we have all of this information in hand, we're just waiting for the final version of the tree inventory report itself. We will then start to analyze data from all of these sources, as well as recommendations, particularly from the implementation guide, to figure out who, how, what, where, when kind of items for an urban forestry program. So in 2022, the tree canopy results can be summarized as you see here. Darker green equals more tree canopy. This UTC means urban tree canopy percentages. And so I don't think this would be a surprise to any of you here. Western side of the city has more tree canopy overall. Eastern side has less. And the area here in Lakeview, maybe over in Springbrook as well, those are the 2 areas with the lowest cover. But the light green is 10 to 20%. So you have a lot of the city that's below 20% of tree cover. That information that I just showed you, coupled with a number of other data sets, resulted in a recommendation in 2022 of where tree canopy improvements should be prioritized. And so we're just using this as another data source. Things have moved along now almost 4 years since this was done. However, again, I don't think this is a surprise. Looking at existing tree canopy cover coupled with population and type of land use in each of these parts of the city, you see areas where it was identified at the time that increasing tree canopy coverage should be prioritized. And again, going back to that equity and environmental justice, you think about Woodbrook and again, Lakeview and parts of Springbrook here. These are all areas that have suffered that environmental injustice over the years. So the second big piece was, again, that 5-year launching guide that we received from University of Washington. But here's the Here's the recommendations: developing a mission, vision, and goals. Sounds kind of almost too obvious, but it's something we need to do. We need to do a comprehensive assessment of the city's resources and then starting to look at what sort of restoration practices are realistic for Lakewood. And so this resource assessment, that's one reason why we did the big tree inventory again, even though there had already been a tree canopy cover assessment a couple of years ago. We wanted to get into a little more detail with the actual trees and tree stands that are in the city. Then there also needs to be community engagement throughout this process. So that will kick into gear a little bit more in 2025 and beyond. And then we also have to make sure internally to the city that there is sufficient capacity, money-wise, people-wise, organizationally, to successfully launch a program and keep it going over time, particularly with a limited budget, which is how Lakewood operates all the time, but it's very strategic in its work. We just have to plan ahead and then we'll be successful. So here's just a quick example of some of the information that came out of that 5-year plan. Talking about completing assessments for what type of trees are there, looking at moving forward into year 5, you've got restoration on, excuse me, on areas of good healthy tree stands. You've got the idea of continuing to plant on publicly owned areas, and you also have this outreach engagement success where you're talking to privately owned tree stands or areas where there could be tree stands, and you're engaging not only the city itself, but people and businesses in Lakewood to help increase the tree canopy. So this is really hot off the press. It's like smoking hot because I got it about 10 minutes ago. This is this is the initial draft map of the inventory results from this year. So I don't know how well this is coming across for you all, but the dark green circles are where they actually did individual tree mapping. So they tried to prioritize, first of all, the public rights of way and the parks. Public institutional grounds, which would include things like Western State Hospital, St. Clair Hospital, the colleges. So those big places that are not really private, but they're not local government either. They're different. Specific private properties that had a lot of acreage. So for instance, up in the Oakbrook Golf Course area, there was some analysis done. They took a look at what's happening here in the Joint Base Lewis McChord clear zone where no development is allowed, what type of trees or vegetation there may be there. And then there was a focus again, going back to this idea of where do we need to focus our work the most. The areas in Lakewood that have less than a 35% canopy cover as identified in 2022. So that's why you see a lot of analysis here in these areas that I've been talking about, the Lakeview area, Springbrook, and down into Woodbrook. The key to the map, if it's this kind of lime green color, at least that's what it looks like for me, that's where there's a greater than 25% forest canopy. Then you see gray is hardscape, not a big surprise there. Mechanically maintained landscaping, you've got automatic sprinklers, you've got other support for that tree population. Natural areas, so for instance, up toward the north here, where you've got this kind of pinkish color. Shoreline is yellow. I'm trying to see if there's one I can point to in here that's easy to see. Not really, but that's okay. And then open water, the blue stuff. So we're going to do a lot more analysis of this, but again, because it's so new, I really can't give you any more information than I am, other than to say this is going to be really valuable as an urban forestry program is started, because a lot of what Lakewood will do initially is looking to these public rights of way, parks, and other property it may own or its partners may own on the government side to start to increase tree canopy there where we can, as we're bringing attention to this for residents and businesses. So these are some of the areas that were done. About 12,000 trees were individually mapped, and then we also had 509 acres of those larger parks, and the South Puget Sound Wildlife Area was included as well. This is the other piece of information that we used. It was the heat mapping project that I mentioned. And I'm going to start coughing, so hang on one second. Sorry about that. This is not a specific temperature in each spot of the city. This is kind of a gradual range. And what you'll see is the blue is where the range, and this is the afternoon, excuse me, of the day that they did the mapping. In the afternoon, the western part of the city was at about 77 degrees. If you come over to the eastern and the southern part of the city in this darker orange, that was up to almost 10 degrees hotter. I'm sorry, I'm coughing. And then down here, particularly in Woodbrook and in Springbrook, you see what's going on there. So this is just showing you that where there is less trees, sorry,
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. Where there's less trees, there's a higher temperature, right? No surprise, but now we have actual data that backs that up.
Hey, Tiffany, what was the temperature just like recorded on the thermometers? What was the temperature that day? Do you know?
I don't know, but I can follow up with you on that. I believe the date that they did this was August 10th.
Okay.
Excuse me, everybody. I'm so sorry I'm coughing like this. So what are we going to do also is take the information that was developed a couple of years ago in a 3-year work plan and update it with new requirements from the state about how we need to plan for climate change and climate change resiliency. That's going to include reducing greenhouse gas emissions, looking at where we might partner with the state and county and other cities regarding electric vehicle infrastructure. And then once again, talking about the urban forestry program. Taking a look at the items of information I just provided, we will then be looking at creating a new 10-year plus plan that will cover natural environment and climate change, which is kind of like the legacy plan for parks. It goes 6, 10 years or even longer perhaps. And then there's going to be a work plan that's about 3 years in scope, where we're actually identifying projects and dollars to help fund them or efforts within the urban forestry program. Those things will both be coming through the Planning Commission and Council, and I would love to bring it to you as well this next year in order to make sure we've got your feedback also before those come to Council for review. So what's left out of that 22 plan are those that you see here. The green arrow means that they are ongoing. There's 2 that haven't started at all, in part because there's a need to partner, for instance, with the electric vehicles, but then there's also the need for some state guidance, which we're just now receiving. So those 2 things are something that we'll be able to pick up starting next year. And I think I'm going to stop there just to see if there's any questions or if there's another part of this whole thing that you would like me to, oops, thank you, like me to cover in more detail.
I have a question. So what state agency is partnering with this development? Is it VOE or what is it?
The state agency, I'm sorry.
Which state agency are we partnering with to do urban forestry and to do all this?
At this point, we're going to be looking to probably DFW and DNR both to see what kinds of programs we can work with them on at low or no cost. And then there's also locally the Tacoma Tree Foundation, the Department of Health again. And then if there's anything like the Nature Conservancy, Conservation District, those types of things. So not only state agencies, but local or regional nonprofits as well. And the idea is not only is there going to be city activity that we do on those public rights of way in the parks, be it grant funded or be it just something we somehow incorporate into the general fund operations, but there will also potentially be grants that we can seek or partnerships we can have with state and regional groups in order to get some of this done, again, low or no cost.
Yeah, the Department of Ecology just opened up a large grant for riparian areas that I was looking at today. That's huge amount of money that will have some bearing on this because it's anywhere in the Puget Sound Basin can qualify.
Okay. Is that one that's got like an application date? I want to say it's in January.
January 15th is the closing date for it. Yeah.
Is that the one that they said they were hoping for $100,000 grants?
That's what we're going to put in for.
I think
It's
that's
under
what they
grant
said
for
they
it, yeah.
preferred, yeah, under or just at 100,000. Yeah, I just saw that today as well. Hey,
Any other
Tiffany, I
questions,
know
Ruth?
one of the criteria is reducing greenhouse gases. So
Yes.
I know that there's certain best practices that help do that. Do we have like, is there a number you know, like on certain days, the air quality is good and bad and in between. So is there like a greenhouse gas number that we have and then we try and do certain things to reduce it? Or are we just doing things that we know will reduce that? Does that make sense to you?
Well, first of all, the information that we've been able to gather over the last few years regarding greenhouse gas emissions in Lakewood is that, surprise, surprise, a lot of it comes from auto. We've got I-5 bisecting the city. And then the other one is energy generation, and wherever our utilities get their energy from gets counted as energy generation for Lakewood. So it's taking a look at what can be done to reduce transportation, single occupancy vehicle usage over time, what can be done over time by the city to encourage, not only non-SOV travel, but also non-gasoline petroleum powered travel. So it's electric vehicles or what have you. And all of that is pretty general, pretty nebulous, but that's where we're at with this right now. Part of what I have to do over the next 6 years is start to incorporate into this plan I've been talking about the new requirements that the state law just changed to include things like you have to update your transportation planning. You have to look at your network and see if it is supportive of mass transit as well as electric vehicle charging stations. That's the kind of stuff that's going to be coming forward in the next probably 4 years. But other than that, it's really looking at voluntary behavior regarding transportation, because that is the major output. We did also look at potentially solar on roofs throughout the city, not only for the city buildings themselves, but in the private areas too. And given the tree canopy, which is kind of ironic, in Lakewood, there really isn't a lot of potential there because there's just not enough open roof space for gathering solar energy enough to make it cost efficient. So that's something to think about as a maybe, as a voluntary thing. If people are wanting to do that, they happen to have a building that does have good, clear sun access, great. But that's not going to be the panacea, the solution for the city of Lakewood.
Yeah, or 4 months out of the year. And then the other thing is just, of course, the non-motorized transportation areas and methods, because that helps people move from here to their sidewalks and that kind of thing with bikes and walking from here to there. And I know the city's made good progress on that, but that's helpful. And
Yeah.
then we're going to be starting our update, Tiffany, next year for the legacy plan. And that's going to be started next year with needing to be done by May of 2026. And so just if there's some, you'll be integrated or you're in some ways so that, if there's goals or strategies or elements that we could plug in, that you get that 2 for 1 is always good, but also if we're looking for grants and things and we can show it being in different plans, that's always so helpful. So.
Yes, absolutely. And this will be urban forestry, climate change, parks, transportation, all that stuff is really blurring. The lines are really blurring between them more and more. As you start to talk about climate change overall, public health overall, all of those topics are getting closer and closer intertwined. So yeah, for sure, you guys will probably be hearing from me over the next year, not only about the legacy plan, but about this other stuff as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question. In the plan, is there going to be like an ongoing inventory periodically of the tree canopy? Or is it just starting at this one point and we just go forward? Are we going to be measuring it?
Yeah. The way the inventory has been conducted, this is a kind of a one-time physical out there counting it by an outside group, but they are providing us with a software that the city's facilities staff, as well as transportation or public works staff, will be able to use to just say, hey, we happen to notice tree X and it used to be healthy and it's not anymore. Or we just found a new spot where this would be really great based on a street project we're about to do or a sidewalk project. This is a good opportunity to add some trees in while we're there. So trying to do a synchronicity of activity to help improve things over time faster.
Your report alludes to a canopy goal of 40% by 2050. I may have missed it. What is it now?
It's at about 26% now. I didn't mention that. So we're at 26. So that's a hefty increase actually. But when you take a look at all of the areas in the city that have the capacity to maybe let people park, not only the public parts get more trees, but have people do so on their private property. It's something that the city council felt was achievable.
Can I expound on that question? Has any thought been put to how many trees does that equate to that we need to plant in order to reach that goal?
We have not gotten there in part because what we want to be doing, looking at future planting, is also analyze what are the good, not only native, but drought resistant trees or heat resistant trees. People have already seen in other parts of the country where these sorts of efforts start, but the species that is chosen for whatever reason is not able to survive because of the changing climate. So we're trying to increase canopy, but also make sure that those trees getting planted can handle what's coming in terms of climate change or what's already here. So in answer to your question, long rambling way of saying, we still need to figure out exactly what those species are.
Yeah, and how big
Thank you.
does it have to be to qualify as a tree for
Yeah,
canopy?
yeah.
You know, we put in 800 shrubs this week into the South Sound Wildlife Area, but the biggest one would be like 9-bark, which is not a large tree.
Yeah,
So how big are they gonna be able to measure?
right. And I don't have the answer off the top of my head, but that's a very good question. I'm the software and information that we're getting from our consultant, which is Facet Northwest. They used to be DCG Watershed, if any of you ever worked with them, will help us understand what they're going to recommend, the types of vegetation to plant, and they will also make provide definitions of what's going to work toward the tree canopy coverage improvement.
But that's so great. So also when they're doing, just the it's like Alan and his team of volunteers and community is doing all this work out there to make sure that we're capturing that, right? Not just like what city's done, but also when planning, public works is approving plats and things like that, would get logged into this software so that it would all contribute to this total, correct? So that we'd have that information.
Yeah, that's the intent, is that this is really going to be a cross-department, cross-discipline work over time, because you can limit an urban forestry program to strictly public rights of way, strictly public trees. But that doesn't get you to the realistic goal, or being able to realistically meet, the 2040 tree canopy goal. So we're trying to do two things at once. So yeah.
So a good marketing program to get the community to recognize it, and then provide support if they can, or just to give FYI, because the giant tree that was there for 75 years, it was 25 years past its life cycle, died, got hit by lightning, so then that does reduce because it's gone now, and putting something new in does take a bit of time to get back to there. So both sides. So
yep, absolutely.
So I have one more point.
Sure.
So the consulting firm that's giving us the species list, some of the decisions that could be made would possibly interfere with, I'm just thinking about invasive, there's unintended invasive consequences that happen historically all the time. Is there a way that we are ensuring that we are not shooting ourselves in the foot and bringing in species that, I'm just going to take some trees are host to invasive insects, for example. Are we vetting them so that we are not making it worse? And some of these, is there a quality? Is it being checked off by botanists?
Yeah, that we are not there yet. So that is a point that we should keep in mind and incorporate into what happens next. And I will take it down and I will share it with our consultants to see if they've got a recommendation, but we're not that far into the program yet.
So I'm the chair of the education committee for the state noxious weed control board.
Okay.
And I would be really happy to work with you and give you recommendations for who you can contact to vet trees.
Wonderful. Thank you.
right.
All right, if there's nothing else, I'll get out of your way. My apologies again for the coughing. I hope could hear what I had to say. And I'll just wish everybody happy holidays.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Yeah, yep. Bye-bye.
I assume you'll share the tree canopy report when you get it.
Yeah, yeah.
Just be fun to read through.
Yeah, Nikki, will you make a note about that will,
So tree canopy is hard to define.
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, well, that,
You know, and tree
Yeah.
canopy changes, so if you're gonna go in and you're gonna plant these small, small Doug firs, then they're gonna be this huge canopy in 25 years.
well, and canopy is the same if it's at 50 feet and if it's 3 feet, if it's complete coverage.
Yeah, except that if you're standing above it, you're gonna be hot.
but the earth will stay cold.
Dwarf that
About
whole
the earth.
area.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, I have to say right now, there's like, when we started this, there was a great research that was done. It was kind of a school-led project that came up with this is important, which they came up with lots of great points. But in the end, it's like right now, there's the enforcement piece, right? Permits of whether you're removing and finding or whatever. So the enforcement piece, which goes with community development. There's the putting in new, which could be parks or streets, transportation, again, 2 different projects. And then there's the drunk driver hits the tree, the storm hits the tree, and they get removed or broken, but not replaced, right? Because now you've got this infrastructure. And then we have, if you look out here along Main Street, when you go between here, it's like all these trees that were, are bulging up and out of the ground, and they're, now crumbling with the sidewalk, and it's affecting the roadway. So it's like, there's tree canopy there. And so then, removing that and then replanting, but you're, really ripping out infrastructure, and it's challenging. So, there's a lot of pieces to it, right? And it comes with really planning the right things, right? I think when the city started, they were like, we're gonna plant 1,000 trees a year, put in a bunch of plums everywhere. It's like, well, that didn't help us in a lot of areas, some places.
I'd be curious in the inventory, I mentioned, came on board here, moved to the area in a new home 5 years ago. And I kid you not, I counted trees and bushes that my wife put into our yard, and it's over 150. So I'm curious, does that count?
Yeah, what counts as a canopy?
Private property as well?
Well, I think they want it to, but right now, I think primarily the inventory was on public, quasi-public property, because you gotta, first of all, have permission and start somewhere. So they really did focus on city property and right of ways. And then these quasi-public, which are like Pierce College, the hospitals, the game farm park, which is public but state. And so I think the idea is that they didn't go onto really private property yet, but we need credit, not credit for it, but we want to recognize it and acknowledge it. So I think that's part of the processes, or that Alan's doing a big project out there to make sure we capture that new things that are there. And if you are new to the area and you're on your private property and you're planning all this cool stuff because it's going to support and survive, that would be appropriate to whatever, that we can record that in some fashion. I think that's what the software is supposed to do, but it's like, how do you manage that? It's a marketing program. It's a data entry, you don't just want anybody in the universe to be able to go in there and start messing with your system, but you want to be able to do those things. So there's, just a lot of coordination and work, but they're getting started. And if anybody's going to do it, it's Tiffany. She is, man, when it comes to like starting from policy and getting it in, she just doesn't mess around. She's in there and she's super smart. So
I know the city of Tacoma uses space shots
Yeah.
for their whole area,
Yeah,
and they can detect a tree coming down that wasn't permitted
Oh.
and look at things of that nature, because I've had somebody I know interact that way with them
okay.
and get caught pulling a tree down, alongside the waterfront.
Big brother. I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's also really accurate because it captures canopy
Yeah.
when you look straight down.
So it's, because those things always happen around Sunday at 2 when there's nobody on duty.
What's the Tree City USA? Is that?
It's a designation that you can have, and what it mean, there's a couple different ways. One is like that you dedicated a dollar, you have some criteria, but you dedicate a dollar amount towards tree preservation. It's pretty loosey-goosey. It could be a lot of different things that you do in the city. Different cities have them, and it's a designation that you say, I promise I'll do this, and I promise, we're doing this. And it could be everything from just your regular maintenance programs to special programs. So, yeah.
All right. Rolling on to the 2025 award.
Okay.
If you didn't get it, there's a new copy on it.
Yeah, we made a couple of adjustments based on what was sent out initially, just because we started kind of looking at it as we're looking at our capital project improvement program, what was priorities of city council, as well as, how do we make use of this group as you often might host a kickoff meeting or something like that. So what we want to do is, first of all, sort of go through this is a draft, of course. Council will review this in early January. I think it's the first or second study session. They'll review this and then give us feedback on it. Because of course we all work on behalf of the council. That's why the Parks Board's here. We work on behalf of the council. So these are topics that we know are part of our upcoming work program and that we would want to brief you on and or have you support with the process and or make a recommendation eventually to council. So it's kind of why you see these things on here. That doesn't mean that we don't bring in other interesting or educational elements that might be of interest to you. But again, it has to be approved by council because it's your work program on their behalf. So the work plan items we'll go through. I'll first just talk about those work plan items, or I'll talk about the item and then kind of tell you where we've plugged it in. As you know, things change. Sometimes we're not ready to do the briefing when we do it. When it's kind of set to come, we might move it around a little bit. Or if it's a specialty topic that we might need a special speaker to do and it's their availability. Tiffany was going to do it last month, but wasn't available on our day. So we bumped it to this meeting. So that can happen as well. But mainly this is us telling council, these are the things we're going to work on. So again, this is draft. It'll go to them and then they'll provide some additional feedback. It would be good to have our youth council on here. And that's not on the list, but maybe we could add that to this. So just the work plan is that we've been working on our Nisqually partnership project. We'll want to bring an update to you when we make. And so we've kind of done that in June. Our goal was to be done in June, but there is a lot of back and forth trying to get some decisions made and also, making sure that we're developing that relationship so we can get trust so that we do get the right information. And there's a new tribal council. It's our third tribal council with this project. So we have to make sure that they're on board too. So it's a work in progress. So we're going to be bringing that to you. We should be really, really ready to have some final information. And then we're tying it to also the park CIP that day.
The CIP again.
Capital Improvement Program. So that would be the big update on the big projects. So you don't see them listed here. That's on American Lake and Wards Lake and Fort Steilacoom and some of the other big projects that we're working on. And we'll give you a much more detailed briefing on each of those activities. So that's that. A special event update. We have that happening in March this year. And the reason for that is we want you to know about all the great things we're going to be working on this year so that you can make sure you participate and help with them if interested. But also we're going to be kicking off the legacy plan. And so we're going to really be developing the first quarter kind of a comprehensive community engagement piece to it. So a lot of times that is tied to neighborhood meetings, special events and activities. So we want to kind of be thinking about those things at the same time. The next one on item number 4 is our street and community outreach and design recommendation. So the idea is we spent a lot of time on the street end report. We had a lot happening last year with street ends. We did pick one, council approved it. So we're going to possibly, if we can get all of our ducks in a row, in February, maybe hosting the kickoff meeting for the neighborhood, getting everybody on board for that Westlake property.
Which
So
one is it again? Just remember.
Westlake,
Westlake.
yeah.
Is there a timetable for the design work out of the city?
No, this would be, well, we'll bring that. That would be part of this meeting because we'll have to bring someone in to help us with that. And it would be, this would be the kickoff like we do community outreach. It's like, well, we have a schematic design based on the report that we did. And we'd kind of start taking a look at that. And it would really just talking about, here are the things that we thought were important is, providing buffer to neighbors, some ADA access. It's pretty long and straight and flat. So, but then what's the shoreline impacts with the new shoreline management and critical areas ordinance and the permitting and then all that. So, and then at this meeting that we think might happen at the end of February, there could be other suggestions and things for like what other street ends might we be able to do? Can we just do something at Park Appreciation Day and et cetera, et cetera? So you'll see that this is really just the kickoff community outreach. And then we're looking at maybe in April, that gives 2 months from when we do our original outreach. It takes time to do some survey work or gather some information. Is that maybe that could also tie to doing as we prepare for Park Appreciation Day, if there's any special sites or something. So we're kind of thoughtfully kind of maybe combining those things as well. 5 is this climate change initiative in urban forestry. As Tiffany said, she wants to come back and chat with us. So we have that happening in September. And we'll see if they're ready to give us some more details regarding that. Sounds like they probably will be. If there's anything that she wants to bring in advance of that, because it's a timely thing for her process, we'll plug that in. So, but again, just putting that bookmark in there. Legacy plan updates, again, talking about kicking that off in March with just probably more the skeleton of the implementation, how that works. We weren't allowed to use any resources to hire anybody to do this. And so we'll be using internal staff to help develop that plan. So that would just be figuring out the capacity and the outline of how we might accomplish that with the resources that we have. That's
How long
that's
did
like
that
a-
take last year or last time?
it was a couple, we took about 2 years,
Yeah.
and it really, Shannon Kelly Fong, who was the assistant to the city manager, did that for us internally. And I mean, we don't have one of her in the city. She's amazing, but we have an amazing plan that was really well written. And part of it was we did the PACA, we did that PACA quality instead of like one swimming pool per 10,000 people, like the other things. We really did it based on the quality of the site as well as the amenities at the site. So that was in 2000. We did an update in 2022. We did an update this year in 2024. So we'll be able to continue that and see the growth and the change. We'll be needing, of course, to work with our GIS department on mapping. And so there's a lot that goes into that. So yeah, that's happening in the next year and a half. So we don't have to start from scratch because we really do have a pretty great document. And city manager was like, can we just update what we have? And it's like, yes, we can, but we want to do it right. And we actually accomplished so much from the last legacy plan. We really need to see what's the next 20 years look
Well, you
like.
need to add to
And
it.
yeah,
We
so
did a
it's
lot
like, yeah,
more.
and what's the next, the legacy plan was we created a lot in Lakewood. We did a lot of great work. And so like, where's the next work? Is it really equity? Is it forestry, urban forestry? There are limited resources. Is it water access? Is it the street ends? Really taking a look at those next steps. So, and planning those for the next 6 to 20 years. Because we are required to do a 6-year CIP, and we want to make sure the legacy plan, which is our PROS plan, Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, which is a requirement to be eligible for grants. So that's why you want to make sure that it's updated by May of 2026, meets all the eligibility criteria, which doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fancy to meet that criteria. There has to be a public engagement. There has to be a 6-year plan, and you have to kind of figure out how you're going to fund it, right? So a lot of times you write grants, or you might need, if you're going to do a bond, or if you're going to do some other kind of way of funding it, you just build those into it. So, but we'll be able to get it done. We're going to make that happen. Then we'll do a senior services update. Important part of what we do, our nomadic roaming senior program. So we'll be talking about that to give you an update on what's happening there. Historic preservation. That's been, there's several things that we have in the city that are historic in nature. We're going to be talking about the H-Barn project. We have 2 cemeteries that we've been working on, the cottages that are over at Western State Hospital, and just cultural resources in general are really required, but also important. So just, maybe giving you an overview of our historic preservation, what we're working on, how we're accomplishing things, action plan.
No, we actually have 3 cemeteries in Lakewood.
Right.
Historic.
Yes, but I only have to manage 2 of them. So we can talk about the other ones as well, because they're talking about the Masonic.
The bird cemetery in the
Yeah.
wildlife area dates back to
Okay, now we have 4.
1850.
We have
Yeah.
the Masonic one
I
that's
forgot
over
the
there by
Masonic one,
7-Eleven,
yeah.
which might actually be in that unincorporated area.
Yeah.
We have the Old Settler Cemetery,
Right.
which we are now the keepers of. We have the patient cemetery. There is one actually out at Western State Hospital, so there's another one. So now we're at 5, so we got a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna focus on ours.
We're trying to get the state to do ground penetrating radar to figure out what's actually
There.
on that site. They
You
think
know-
there may be as many as 100 grave sites there though.
If you find out more about that, keep us in the loop because we inherited the Old Settler Cemetery and I gotta tell you, I got 2 pieces of paper from the county. One was written in early cityhood by the city saying they wanted to create a historic something for it. Another one was written by the city. So, we just don't have any information on it. So I had Steve Dunkelberger, if you remember him, he used to be part of the Suburban Times back in his paper. And he's just a historic buff. And so I said, I just do what you do. And he's has access to every newspaper that was written before, until I think 1800. So he just did some kind of thing. And he just kept sending me stuff. So there is actually a list. There's 2 different websites that have lists. They're not matching. So there's this one might have a few more than
Yeah.
that. It was called the Old Settlers Cemetery. It's called the Gravelly Lake Cemetery. It was called the Cemetery by the Lake, and it was called something else. So it was referred to in different ways over the eras. Every time he would send me an article from 1820, 1860, 1920, I've kept it. I'm kind of just sticking it all in a box right now. Then there's another gentleman that called me and asked if it was an active cemetery, and I said, please, I hope not. And he said, the reason is that he has, people in his family lineage, I don't know what you call it, generations, that are buried there. And he's got 12 more, that are still alive. And I said, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to put them there. However, I would love whatever you have for information on the people that you think are there. And I don't know if I've heard back from him for a while, but we did talk about if he wants to come in with his box of tricks, would scan whatever he has and work with them. So he can either leave it with us if he trusts us, but if not, so again, it's like, I'm really more interested in the names, but also what was it referred to? When was it? Because we're just trying to, and at some point there might be some history buff that might want to come in and really put some time and energy into
Put
this
together, yeah.
because the issue with it we found is, of course, the reason that the city agreed to take it on is that there was this idea, it looks a little rough and tumble, maybe we'll turn it into sort of a nicer trimmed up place, but it's a cemetery, but it's also because of the nature of being a cemetery, it's this really pristine prairie area. So there's all these plants and bugs and trees and things. There's a bunch of Doug firs that really don't belong in there, but I said, we're not taking anything out right now. But we really want to we've been doing this inventory. So really it's like not mowing it and gathering seeds. And we have these really interested and smart people that are a professor from PLU and a botanist and a retired landscape architect that they're mapping, they're inventorying. And so we're gathering. And then at some point, how does this pristine prairie area partner and mirror with the graves? Because you get one group saying, oh, you're being disrespectful, but it's like, you don't even know where they are. It's mounds and sunk and maybe a marker, maybe not. And then how do you, create maybe a walkway where you can access and look and review and preserve, but also preserve these other things. So it's a work in progress. So,
It's a great potential.
yeah, lots of
What about the
potential.
history
We need to find someone like you that would come in and decide we love it. So
The history that Pierce County had, did they have much?
I got 2 pieces of paper and none of it. And then I finally said, I know you guys have archives because
Yeah.
we all do. There's got to be a box somewhere. You buried people there. Somebody did. And
Right.
they don't. And so Roxanne sent me, I think it was a deed. It was a deed from the original people that had it and who they sold it to with a little bit of information. So finally she found a couple of things that I stuffed in my box. It's a file, it's electronic. We stuffed in a box. So it was, again, just part of that history on someone sold it to somebody because, for $20 back in 1800s or something.
Yeah,
So,
1850, somebody died. You wrote it in the back of the family Bible, and that was the only record.
right.
And so a
yeah.
lot of those have been lost. That's what we found out at this
Yeah. And
bird cemetery.
right. But when you got to some kind of a modern day, there is like cemetery laws, and there were, and I was assured it was a closed cemetery. That meant that it had been like closed to you know, somebody, it was an active cemetery and then you do something
Yeah.
and you. it's
Decommission the cemetery.
Decommission, something like that.
Decommission the cemetery.
I
for-
got nothing. So, but again, I haven't spent, hours and hours and hours researching it, but just,
You have hours and hours and hours.
yeah.
No, that's a volunteer job. We
Yeah.
need to find somebody.
Somebody
like,
really that's
you know,
interested, that really wants to. And-
history buff. that
Yeah,
wants
and
to
so
do
that could, this gentleman, he and I chatted for quite some time and I kind of explained big picture and what was happening, where it was and all this stuff. I think he lives out in Yelm or something. So, you know, he could be somebody that helps. And if his family's there, he might be interested in doing some more, but we'll find the right person, just like it takes a while. You know, we're still looking for the orchard person that wants to, you know, do all of that with the orchard, but, it's just another one of those things, but to know we have it and to know that it needs some of that attention and love and then finding the right people, you know, there's not enough money to pay somebody to do it, so. But anyway,
Another person, people who founded our church over 100 years ago,
yeah.
they're buried there.
Oh, okay.
Those two people.
Yeah, so we have lists. So again, we can bring, spend some time and maybe do some summaries just to sort of know what we have, but yeah, so if there's some family or anybody, if there's anything, just as you know now, if there's anything that pops up regarding that, again, it's a bunch of puzzle pieces right now that we'll stick in a box and then at some point we can start putting those things together in timelines, so. But, we just want to, you know, again, respect the space and then there's sort of two parallel universes happening there, so. Climate change, we talked about that already. Oh, we're up here, historic. Next thing is code changes. That's just if council requests anything, you know, when people are driving too fast or running too slow or something. And then, having a youth council update, you know, we have a pretty amazing youth council and they met with council last night, their joint meeting like you guys do. And they're just so stinking grown up and mature and they want to have a voice and they're doing such great things and they want to do, were you there last night? Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about it? Yeah.
Oh,
Why don't you- yeah, I'm looking over here. Oh, she's right here. Sorry.
They were really interested in getting council members to be more interactive with us as a whole as well, and we kind of brought up the topic of making a social media page and having them interact on there with us, and kind of making it more open towards like our generation, just so that they're more aware of it. But then that was really all. It was just kind of like a summary of what we were planning to do and what we.
How was
hope
that
to-
received? How did they like? We can. do
Yeah,
that."
they seemed pretty interested in it and seemed fairly willing. From the couple, I know the mayor spoke, and I know Bransters.
Mike Branstetter, Paul Bulkey will jump in. Yeah. So I think they're all very interested and, I think they're really interested in how, you know, the youth council wants to have a voice and they want to have a say. The other thing I thought was so interesting that you talked about was they want to be engaged in like city activities and projects and programs and development projects. And so I loved it because it's like really having a voice and how, you know, having that perspective brought forward and that they were all involved with their different advisory boards. They mentioned that and having a voice and that they thought that was really interesting. So I think it's really great. And I thought the really great thing was, that, you know, this is the largest youth council we've ever had. And we're kind of, you get kind of concerned because when you have this massive group, and the council said, well, what's the right number? And is it too many? And they're like, if everybody shows up and is engaged, then that's great.
Yeah.
You know, when it's not great is when they don't show up or they show up, but they're not participating or engaged. So there's that incentive or that, peer pressure, so to speak, to really have it be serious and to do it. And you, of course, are showing up all the time and we have another gal,
Yeah, she.
Alexandra's on there. So yeah. Alexandra, do you want to share anything from last night? Were you there last night?
Last night I was with the youth council board and how you were saying about how a lot of us are interested with kind of like the social media page and integrating more of city council. I think a really good idea that a lot of the youth council would be interested in as well as doing like having the different advisory boards and having like a specific segment for each advisory board and kind of explaining how we do and using that to advertise for next year's youth council as well, to have everyone understand what each advisory board is for and like what they focus on, rather than just having like a small what's the word I'm looking for, like a small recap of the advisory board, and having a more interactive and like visual example would be a really good way to get more people interested in different advisory boards as well, is I think one main thing that we wanted to get with that social media.
Oh, with the
Out.
social media, that's great. That's a great idea.
What's the plan to implement that social media piece? You guys,
It's still,
that, what's the plan to start implementing that social media piece that you want?
still in like the drafts of making that plan, but I think our main idea is we're gonna do like kind of small reels in a way to just really advertise like what we are doing within the youth council. And this is like a fairly new idea within the advisory boards, but I think our plan would be to have like one overall, like a bigger reel overall, and to have a couple seconds or like just a segment of each advisory board. So we have like Parks and Rec, the Lakewoods Promise, and all the other ones to get that, to like get the visual of the advisory boards, and then we would post that on social media, maybe towards like our youth summit, or like at the beginning of the year when we're starting our year for the youth council, is what I like I'm thinking right now, but we haven't really created a finalized draft for that plan.
Did you say that that you had a new was it called a video committee, or what was the committee that you have just started that you're working on this?
Like a video committee, I think it's about 5 to 8 members of the youth council who are all planning different like small clips to just promote the youth council. Right now
Yeah.
we're focusing on like our save the date ones for our youth summit is the main one that we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, that's so great. The question came, it was, what kind of led to this conversation was so great, is one of the council members said, "Oh, did you read your article in the Connections, and what did you think about that?" And they're like, "Well, it was great, but we really want to do this to focus on our generation and how we get the word out to our friends and peers." And it was just perfect because you had a person that picks up a magazine and reads it and says, "Wow, this is a great story." And the youth are saying, "Yeah,
It's a magazine.
it's a magazine. That's not really how we're getting our information." So it was a good segue to that. I thought it was, although probably not planned that way, I thought it was a good representation of the difference between how the city's putting information out and how the young people really want to see and get the information out and be a part of getting it out. So I thought that was fantastic. But
Could I just ask one more little thing? So let's say you're gonna do us. What would you imagine in our reel you would be? What would we do? Would we be outside? Would we be at a meeting like this? What do you want to convey to?
I think I'm not personally on the video committee or anything, but I think like a good idea could be definitely outside, maybe in the summer and spring. And I don't know what they're necessarily leaning towards, whether it's like very informational videos or more so like the Lakewood reel, the Facebook reel of everyone in the library, where it was kind of just like slang words that they were throwing around, kind of getting their attention, our generation's attention at least. And I think that would be really cool if we kind of incorporated that, but it was also outside and it was more like it more went with the flow of what each advisory board is about.
Okay. Yeah.
and
Good.
fun and more fun and
Yeah.
interesting, not so formal and informative.
Right. This is-
Informative with fun.
Yeah,
So yeah.
This doesn't look fun. We love it, but.
Yeah.
Be that kind of person.
But it could come together really good. I mean, because the short videos, whether it's a TikTok or a YouTube short, and then
Yeah.
if you choreograph those right to be able to merge into one video, it could turn out and be really influential.
Yeah, very
And the city does have a gentleman working with us, Derek, who is a younger person, and he has brought some of that technology and ideas for different fun things to our events and activities. And so, and with the youth council support, I think that, it'll happen. So I think that's great. But anyway, doing a youth council update at some point, and I think we have that plugged into more May, because it'll be towards the end of they're a school year based sort of group. So they start in September and they start in August, but they kind of officially start in September, and then they could do sort of a summary of all the things that they did and learned, and then maybe thoughts about next year. And I think they've done a really good job as well with transitioning, where the seniors are heading out, but then there's this next group to step up and be sort of the leaders to help with the new folks coming in. So that's really nice. It's really they're amazing. I mean, they are amazing group of young people. It's really great to see them in action when they start talking and their ideas and all the things they're doing. So, yeah. So that's our work program for the year. So if there's anything that you're thinking that we didn't cover or that you'd like to see maybe integrated somewhere within this calendar, this would be the time to bring it up, that we could share it with council and say that, you know, or if there was a topic, doesn't necessarily have to be a policy or an action item, even though there's a lot of that happening next year. But if there was a topic like this year, we talked about playgrounds.
Right.
There were probably some other things that we talked about, that,
I forget this plan, you know, I mean, we make it, we go, oh, that's great. And then the next meeting comes, go, what are we doing?
yeah, well,
I
we,
don't know if I need it like on the backs of the draft minutes.
you mean
just
on
like
the
it-
agenda, like
I'm
on
just
some,
gonna read,
oh.
we have this page.
yeah,
And
well,
I'm putting all these topics, when the date's gonna happen.
oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we can do something like that. We do have, I mean, we do give it to you when it's approved by council. But we could figure out a way of having it, I guess I used to do, not so much the
The
topic.
director's report. with
Did it
that.
have it on the
Yeah.
director's
Yeah, I
report?
kind of had the meeting stuff on that.
Oh, okay, we'll figure out a way of
Yeah.
keeping it up to date, because we do move things around a little bit, but it is our sort of work program.
Mhm.
And then when we have our joint meeting with council, which I think is in June,
Mhm.
or was last year, we used to do it in April, but now we've kind of hit the June mark.
Which we're
it's-
actually gonna have 2 meetings in June this year.
Yeah, but the joint meeting with them is at council, and so they're talking about moving their meetings around, so are not dates, but study sessions and such, so that date could change, but that's when we kind of go over, you know, what we've accomplished and then what we're working on. So, but they will have approved this in January. But yeah, we'll do that so it's updated, or maybe just provide an update. What we used to do is put lines through. Okay, we hit
Yeah.
that one, we hit
Yeah,
that one.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, I used to do a much more formal director's report, but I always run out of time. So.
Yeah. So many hours in a day.
but I think, you know, as I'm here over time, and you're gonna get this, there's a rhythm to this.
Mhm.
But at first it can be really confusing, like, it seems so random.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah, there's
Follow
some
the ro-
strat, sometimes it is
Yeah.
random, but it is sort of strategic as in
Yeah.
what we need to get. Because oftentimes you're making a recommendation before we take it to council so that they know that there's been public input,
Yeah.
or hosting a public process, or even just the kickoff of a public process or engagement somewhere in the public process, so that when it's a topic, we want to make sure that it's not being done in a vacuum, that there's been input. And yeah, so that's kind of why the times are picked at certain times to keep up with the other work programs that are backed up behind it. So. Any other topics or thoughts that, no?
Nothing that comes to mind for me right now.
Yeah,
Okay, it's a lot.
it's a good start.
Thanks. Oh, and then on the back are just the list of the special events that we have, the mass major events that are coming up. So well, it kind of jumps into what's next. my
Director's
director's
report.
Okay, but anyway, so just to give you a heads up, I have the Parade of Lights is coming up December 7th. It's at 4:30 p.m. If you or your organization or, you know, come and watch, or if you want to be in the parade in some way, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups, everybody's welcome. Just let us know so that we can put you in the right space. But on the back, it also has this MLK Beloved Community Welcome Walk. There's going to be a kind of a keynote kickoff before that. And it's a gentleman that's talked. Beloved Community was really, it's not just a day or an event. It's really a initiative or that a lot of communities have engaged in. And it's really about making, you know, when you're looking at diversity in your community and engagement in your community, and that everybody's welcome in your community, which is the purpose of our welcome walk. But it's really about being just, you know, creating this community. And I think Lakewood's done a good job of creating a sense of community, but really making sure that everybody's welcome. And so anyway, so there'll be so there's going to be sort of a keynote speaker that's doing a kickoff before the walk. And then there's going to be a series of workshops. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. And
that
the keynote will be in the pavilion, and then there'll be a series of workshops that might be in different locations throughout the city. But if you're interested in learning more about that, it's an invitation sort of event, but we sent it off to sort of, initially certain individuals. And then as we have the ability, we'll be bringing more people in. So if you're interested, I can, put your name, send it to you so you can be a part of it if you want.
You know about the turkey run tomorrow, is that right?
I think the turkey run is not, do you know anything about it? I think it's a rogue group that that they just meet and do. They don't get a permit for, so I'm probably not gonna know anything about it at all. So no, I can't tell you anything about it. Yeah. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about
Where's it
that.
at?
Usually they do turkey football or like a turkey bowl or whatever.
I think
and
it's
they
our,
usually find
I think it's
but-
our Jingle Bell people that,
Mhm.
do a little family, and their family's like 500 people now, so.
That's a
It's
big
on,
family.
it's a Thanksgiving thing that we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. Nobody's gonna get fired. But anyway, this is for 2025, so our last thing is 2026, so that's coming up. Okay, I just wanted to give you a heads up. So we applied, oh, sorry,
Can
what?
we piggyback off of that? Cause on the Monday after that is the Rodney King Artist Reception. So if you're interested in coming and see me,
That
artists.
It's not the art that's there now, it's the art.
13th.
Yeah, it's the
13th.
13th.
We'll send you,
From
we'll
5
send,
to
we're,
7.
we'll send you information on that. You don't have to write it down now, but we'll send you information on all of that, but it's part of the MLK,
Okay.
events and activities. So we'll send
Send
them.
you guys a flyer for it.
Would be great. And include the, welcome walk.
It's all both on the same.
They're both
flyer.
on the same one. And then, check with, Sally about, sending out the information to the park board about that presentation. Yeah. So anyway, this summer, I think we told you, we presented for the Edgewater Park, grants. We were the number 1 and number 3, presentations throughout the state. So we're pretty sure it's about it's $2.1 million. And we just did a presentation, technical review for the boat launch element of the park project. We divided them into 2 so we could look at some different grant programs. And we got great feedback, and it's $1 million grant. So we'll be applying for that. And we'll do the final presentation in February, and all of those tie into the legislative allocation. So hopefully that'll give us several $1 million to do the Edgewater Park project, which will start next year. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Really good.
That's a
Yeah,
big-
we got
big
really good
chunk of it.
feedback. Yeah, we did the presentation, Devi and I did the presentation, and we got done in, Carl Harris, remember Carl Harris, he was in Aberdeen, Hoquiam, something like that. He was on the review, he retired, and he's like, any questions? Mary, have you done this before? And I said, a couple of times. He goes, good job. I don't have any questions. No, he doesn't. I don't have any questions. I don't have any questions. So there was some good feedback on our budget just to double check some costs. So that was really good feedback. So that's good. Anyway, we just opened the Wards Lake project bids, phase 1 and phase 2. We're combining them together. It's been a, work in progress for so many years. Anyway, we got 9 bids. We got a good low bid. We had a couple good low bids that we should be able to do everything we want to do out there, because we did a base bid with some alternatives. We weren't sure if the bids came in. So we're doing all of our due diligence. We're having a special council meeting on December 9th. It's a study session, so that if everybody works out, they'll approve it, so that we can look for a notice to proceed in January and get started on that. So that's very exciting. That's a $3.5 million project. It's actually going to be like $6 million when you look at all the design and permitting and stormwater and shoreline and all the stuff that we have to do, but it's going to be amazing. We'll give you an update on that down the road when we're ready. The city also received a grant from the Names Foundation through Partners for Parks, because they didn't want to give it to us. They wanted to give it to Partners for Parks, but not for the barns. They already gave us $1 million. They're going to give us $99,000 to replace the dog park fence. It's
Okay.
it's almost,
Yeah.
it's from 2008, so it's working up towards maybe 2000 before that, but
Great.
yeah, so we're gonna figure out, we've been replacing posts and gates and things along the way, but we're gonna figure out as much as we can do for that whole 26-acre area. If we were to do it based on what we wanted to do, it would be about $2.5 million. So we're gonna figure out what we want it to be and have
You're
it.
thinking synthetic fencing of some
Well, we
sort?
don't really want to just put chain link around it. 'Cause it
Well,
looks
no,
like
but
crap,
there's new plastic posts and
maybe,
things,
yeah. So whatever we can do so it looks
don't
still kind of
decompose.
farming-ish, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so we're gonna do the best we can. We typically work with fence specialties for like product types and then.
Oh, they are, yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, they're expensive, but you know, in the long run, they
Long run,
last
yeah.
longer.
Yeah,
I remember when they put those in, I was thinking, well, you know, I'll probably be alive to see this come down.
yeah, it was all done with volunteers. It was all mostly done with volunteer work and donations. So that was a big project. So,
Because that brings community, you know.
oh,
You
it's,
wanna
yeah,
do
it's probably the second most used feature at Fort Stewart. The
Oh.
first would be walking around the lake.
Yeah.
The second would be the dog park. I mean, every other car coming through has a dog hanging out, like, yeah, I'm here. So grateful. We also, the council just approved the LTAC grants, and we were very successful for all of our special events. You know, being able to use LTAC funds for our Summerfest and Farmers Market and festivals and Fiesta de la Familia and some of the other things that we do really is beneficial. So, we don't have to use general fund money for it. So that's really helpful because, as the general fund gets, you know, that means we might have to stop doing some of these things. And those are also what really create community and really bring in folks from throughout our community that may not feel welcome or may not feel engaged in other areas. They come to the farmers market, they come to Summerfest, they come to some of our festivals and events. And so that's great. Many of you may have heard that we've been talking about doing a Camp Murray boat launch master plan. I think every mayor since I've been here, starting with Doug Richardson, and I started with Bill Harrison. So Doug Richardson was soon thereafter, has talked about doing this. Well, they finally signed an MOU a couple of weeks ago. And so we're going to start, and we have ARPA money allocated to do this. So we're going to start that next year, and really focus on access and equity. Their biggest concern, of course, is terrorism and security. So, of course, they will be a big part of this process. But again, I was like, okay, we've been talking about this for 23 years and it just happened. So that'll be starting next year.
3 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, yeah, well, since I've
We
been
live to
here,
see it.
somebody may have thought about it before that, but I know that, since I've been here, they've been talking about it. But you know, and every time you kind of think you're getting close, someone leaves and then there's a new person and then they
Right.
come in and they don't care
Is it
or,
what?
yeah, or they're concerned that we're gonna ask for money that takes away from their, because you know, every government entity asks for capital things. And so they were concerned, you know, is there are requests, we're not requesting money now, we're just doing a planning process, but at some point we will go in for grants like boat launch grants and RCO grants and things. Is that going to take away from, you know, they want, I don't know, let's say tanks, emergency management equipment or whatever they use at Camp Murray. So,
A lot of morale support equipment.
yeah.
You know.
So we just want to so that was a little bit of a hesitation last year. You know, there's always a reason, but this year they signed it. So somebody said, okay, right before they left. So, yeah. And then just the last thing is American Lake Park boat launch. We have 2 of the ramps of the 3 closed. The water was quite low, which technically it's so low, it's hard to launch anyway. But there's so much, you know, it's just really in bad shape. So we are working with Fish and Wildlife to come in and do a repair project. And we're just waiting for one last permit and council will be looking at that on Monday to approve the expenditures for that. And so we're hopefully going to go in. Edgewater also needs work, but if the idea is it's moving it, you know, it doesn't make sense to put a bunch of resources in there, but that's still going to be a couple years down the road from planning and permitting, but
That's classified as maintenance.
for what we're doing down
Yeah,
there, yeah, because
yeah.
we're going just to the end and we're replacing some of the only thing that we're kind of doing that's a little bit past is articulated mat, which is what those it's like bricks with cable and
Mhm.
fill.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna go out 8 feet because it drops off, you know. There's a drop off at the end of the ramp and then you go down about 20 feet and then there's a drop off
Right.
just from the tree, whatever that's called. So anyway, so we're just gonna clean up the end a little bit so that the drop off isn't such a drop off. So, and as the water comes up, people don't notice it, but when water's low, it's been difficult and so anyway. Fingers crossed that we get our final permit for all of that. But we're lucky. American Lake's a closed lake, so you don't have that fish window that you have in most of the other lakes. So, yeah. So that's all my updates with what since last month we were here and yeah.
So when are you gonna get the roof on the log?
Well, they poured the footings last week and it's just been rainy and busy, but the shelter's here. And then as soon as the lid gets put on, which ideally should have been, the shelter took too long.
Yeah.
Between now and next week, probably, starting December 9th. So by the 9th, there's a volunteer that's a paint person out of Gig Harbor. That's their business. When they read about this project, he offered to come in
Mhm.
and reseal
Yeah.
the log. So he's
Yeah.
gonna be maybe sanding it down a little bit and resealing it to protect it. And then Fence Specialties will come in and cage it so that it's
Mhm.
somewhat protected from
Yeah, the
vandals.
tarp just isn't good for that wood.
No.
You know,
It's not. So it's,
yeah, the longer it sits on there, the
yeah, but it's
What are you
really
gonna
old.
do?
So what are you gonna do? So it did get stolen for, a little while. So we had to get a new blue tarp, but, yeah.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah,
probably
I
a
saw it.
homeless person with a
Oh,
fancy,
Jane.
yeah, so
You
there's
know.
probably a homeless person out there with a fancy new house, but, so we, but anyway, no, it's been and the shelter, I mean, the fact, it was ridiculous the amount of time. I just have to say is that we've been so used to, doing this business for so long where consultants really want to work hard and make a good product. And vendors really want to work hard and make sure you get, and it's like, it's like, I'm gonna buy $28,000 something from you. Call me back,
Yeah, yeah.
and then ship it.
Yeah.
Oh, we were waiting for something. It's like, what? It's been kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
Gosh, so. But anyway, so it took way longer than it needed to. But anyway, it's on its way.
Somebody asked me, is there any plans to put a new roof on the barns? The ones
No.
that are ready?
No, the ones that, they all got new roofs back
No,
in,
back in the-
when the city incorporated, well, it was I was here, so it was 23, or pardon me,
23.
2002 or 3.
Yeah.
And what happened was, it was when the zoo tax got implemented, there was 2001 is when it got implemented. And then I think a year later, they came back because they had to accrue the money for a year. There was a element that got tied to the zoo tax. It said we needed to spend $75,000 on historic preservation at Fort Steilacoom. So we worked with Skip Ferrucci, who was with Metro Parks, Pierce County Parks. And we put a fence around the cemetery because people were just riding their horses
Right,
through it.
right.
We thought that was pretty disrespectful. And then we re-roofed as many barns as we could. And so that's what's held them up. Just
Good thing you did, because the one that didn't get
the one
roofed
that
is
didn't
the
get
one
roofed
that
fell. Yeah.
Right.
fell
Dropped
down.
down, yeah.
It
was kind of
saved
a
those
balsa wood
buildings.
thing.
It really
Yeah,
did.
absolutely did. So not at
That
this
to
point.
100 people.
I mean, it was literally balsa wood. And,
Oh my gosh.
and then the reason that one fell is that it was, really wet and then it snowed
Oh,
and then it rained again and there was so much weight on it, it just went.
yeah.
So no, there isn't, but the H barn will get a new roof or roofing when it's probably.
Yeah, when the
redone.
H barn's done, there'll be public support
Yeah.
to do something with those others, even if
Yeah.
it's just re-roof them and use them for
They're just used for
Or
storage right now.
storage
so-
or whatever. But Ron Banner said, wouldn't this be a great place for a school program that'd be out here?
And it will be when we
Yeah.
get it built. So yay. I love it.
So one more thing, the log.
Yeah.
I was out there with some Pierce County Conservation. I said, see that log there? And I explained the story of it. And they said, this is what I said, I thought they were gonna say, oh, this tree was from here. There was this giant old growth forest here, wasn't there?
Yeah.
No, so I thought, I want to be sure we get that on the information.
Yeah.
This was someplace else.
Yeah,
This is not what
Packwood.
you're
It was in
looking at.
Packwood, actually, is the location where it was Packwood. And there will be information on the log,
Yeah.
the story of the log. And then also we're looking at how we might tie it to from indigenous people, Native Americans, because it's part of the Nisqually Loop Trail.
Yeah.
But there's a thing called a seasonal round that we found, and it's really interesting. And I've seen 2 or 3 different ones, and it's all about how we think of things January through December from a season and from a year, and how the seasons are. You can
Dry.
and how you survive, what you needed to do in each season to survive. Like in the spring and summer, there's a lot of abundance, and so that's when you're hunting and fishing and gathering. And then you have, during the fall and winter is when you need to like prepare for the winter. And in the winter, you don't have abundance because there's snow and wind and rain and things. And so the seasons of how you utilize the natural resources and it's around. So we kind of talked about how that element, but there will be information on the tree.
Because it's really strange. I'm, from Lakewood and I love this log, it's part of the log, right? You remember how like, that's the big
I grew
question,
up-
where's the log?
Above Tacoma Door when it was still going,
Oh.
which is where the
The log
log
started,
came from.
Yeah.
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 And so when that's up there, we want to have the other people fall in love with the log too.
Yeah.
Like, please continue our love of the log.
Yeah, someone, I've had some folks that don't have any idea what this log even is from or means. They must have never read a book. And then there's other folks that, when we did a presentation updated, I think it was Ritter coming, was like, why did you put it there? Can't you move it somewhere else? It's like, well, no, we can't move it. It's not being
You're
moved.
lucky to have it.
We're lucky
right?
to have
They
it,
can't.
and the city has spent a lot of money to preserve
Yeah.
it, so I think the community should be happy about that, and it's slow and steady, we're getting there.
So what's the deal with this orchard restoration project at Fort Steilacoom Park? They had a post on Facebook. They're looking for volunteers. Do you know anything about that?
It was probably Pierce College, if it's
Okay.
from Pierce College, we have over time, all these years, we get groups that come in and they want to do something, so we come in and we talk to them about this and that and the other thing, and we've always talked about the orchard, because that was a project that was just all completely covered with blackberries.
Yeah.
Worked with a guy, a mower person that came and did it, and then the Boy Scouts through some Eagle Scout pulled all the vines out and everything, and so we keep it mowed down. But there's a whole nother section.
Yeah.
So there's a instructor at Pierce College. It's all excited now about having their students do community
Hmm.
outreach and things, and so it's like, well, maybe we'll do the orchard, and maybe we'll be a part of the orchard, and
Hmm.
what does that mean?
And is that the part of the college property? Is that what they're gonna just address?
No, it's
Comments
on
to the-
city property-ish, but it's right along
On
that
the
way.
boundary, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Huh? It's in
Well, it
our,
kind of crosses
it's,
into.
well, one of the water tanks is on our property, one of the water tanks is on their
Right.
property, so it's up in our area. And so, they're like, can't you just mow that area down so we can get in and see it? And I'm like, we got a lot of other things we're working on, but we'll try. So they're interested, they've been talking to me about it for about 8 months, and they haven't really had a meeting out there yet. So if they do, great, love it, would love to communicate and work with them on that. But I just, there's
seems
gotta be some
organized.
continuity of some,
Yeah.
yeah, because we don't have the resources to do it. It's just like, a lot of projects that we have, it's like, we will do everything we can to manage and help groups be successful. We want to make sure they're doing the right thing in the right spot. So we're happy to do that. And so I think Jay's met with them or that's,
A lot
I
of
didn't
those
see
trees
that
are
on
really
Facebook.
old too.
Huh?
A lot of those trees are really old.
Yeah.
And are gonna die. They're
Yeah.
Their life
Their
cycle
life
anyway,
cycle,
yeah.
yeah, they're probably planted with the poplars, and those are,
my orchard that Debbie's grandfather planted. We've lost all but the last 2 trees.
Yeah.
Because they were
They-
100 years old.
Yeah.
yeah, they do. But it would be interesting to see, just if someone really wanted to be interested, just to maintain them and keep them a bit healthy and prune them up if they need to be pruned up, or do some plant identification, because there are probably some historic species out there. But we have people that, go up and pick apples and
Yeah.
plums and pears and all the different fruit that's in the park. As long as it's for your personal use, we don't care, right?
Thank you.
I hadn't seen that, but yay, they,
It was on Facebook.
Yeah.
Karen got it, and then she said something to me, and I said, I haven't heard that.
yeah.
I'll
But
find out.
she
Yeah.
was saying, I'm waiting for a mission statement,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I thought was
yeah.
a really good point.
yeah. Or what's the goals?
Yeah, what are you
And-
doing?
And there was
I-
no response.
No.
I'm not, yeah, I'm not really on Facebook, so I didn't get that. So I don't know. We should probably,
Well, we could.
find out who's doing it. Yeah.
I'll send it to you. Or we'll
Yeah.
give it to you.
Send it to me. I said, well, we've been working on the orchard for years. We just can't
Yeah.
quite keep it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like anything else. It's like you get out there, you talk about it. Here's what you might do. Here's how it might work, and
Yeah.
they never call you back. Then there's someone that comes and it's like, how about we do all this, and then I can get the trees and we could make like, some Fort Silicon Park cider and we could sell it. Like we did that for the honey. We had bees up there for a while, and then they did honey, and then we sold honey, and we bought some bee equipment to further, and then we had I think they called them Russian killer bees, came in and
Not Russian.
killed the hives, and so we lost the hives. And so then that person moved on with their life, and so we don't have bees out there. So again, we're totally, and it was like, well, let's, kind of fence it off, put some cute signs out there to give some bee information and education. So we're totally open to all things. And if there's a group dedicated and interested in doing something, we'll do everything we can to help them. Just gotta be ready to go. I haven't heard anything back for a while. A lot of people do things on their own and then they come in and say, we're gonna do this. And it's like, are you gonna do
Are you really?
this? Or no, you're not. We want to do it at night. Like, well, we're closed. That's the other thing. It's closed, so.
Any reports from board members?
Nessa's on there. We didn't get to see her. Hi, Nessa.
I want to give you a report
Okay.
from the weed board.
Oh, the weed
The
board.
Weed board.
And not the cannabis board. This is the
No,
noxious
No,
weed
no,
board.
not the weed board. We're probably, I'm very excited about this. I think we're probably gonna be listing holly as a class C weed, so that will give us ability to kill it when it's in our parks.
Okay, because we were talking
That's a
about that.
Yeah.
We were talking about that at Primley, remember?
Yep.
It was like, somebody's like,
Some
ooh,
people
I
love
love
it.
this holly. And you're like, please don't love the
Yeah.
holly.
Yeah, so, and then we are putting on a free,
Yeah.
for Jay needs to know this, we're putting on a free, herbicide workshop over at, Lake Wold again. So
When is that?
it's gonna be in the spring, so it'll be April.
If you
probably.
give us lots of notice, that'd be swell. That way we can plug it in. There might be other folks that want to come and learn more about it. Most of them all have their certifications, but. it's
We
nice
have to
see.
give it, continuing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's good. Yeah.
So they get the credits for that.
Yeah,
And
that'd be
then,
great.
If you know any other landscapers that, this is especially good for people like small time, because they have to pay for all of their
Mhm.
travel and everything.
Yeah,
that
no,
comes
that's
with it.
wonderful. That's great. Yeah, just give us a heads up so we can plug it in the work permit.
All right, happy holidays, everybody. Our next meeting is in January.
January, no
28th.
December meeting. So happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, whatever you
Happy New
celebrate or don't.
Yeah, triple whammy.
Celebrate every
Yeah.
day.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move, we adjourn.
Alan and Shelley. Hi,
Right.
thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you all again.
Yeah.